In this interview, Local 514's host, Savannah Craig, spoke with Stefani Balinsky, the head of content strategy at Loans Canada. Craig and Balinsky discussed the scarcity of affordable vacant units in Montreal. To hear more on the issue, watch the full interview.
We'll get right into it. I wanted to start by asking what's causing the scarcity of affordable vacant units in Montreal?
It's many factors, actually, and some of which you might not even consider. The easiest one to identify is, of course, inflation and rise of interest rates. So each year, the landlords are allowed to increase rents according to cost of living, as well as any improvements done to the actual property. That means that they can pass on things as like tax hikes, which of course, the cost of buildings in the Montreal region and in all of Quebec have gone up. They can pass along some of that cost, as well as any other, borrowing costs. They can also pass on in the new lease. Any new renter can also see what costs have been, what a previous tenant has paid, and they can take that as a springboard. Another thing to understand is that it's supply and demand. Now, if wage increases, which we've seen in Quebec, and high employment in Quebec means that people are willing to pay more, whether for luxury or not, especially to be in certain areas, close to a metro, close to good shopping. You can command greater dollar for that. While landlords are not allowed to reject applicants, they can, of course, look into your credit history. If you have a poor credit history, that is a red flag. Now, why is there such a lack of social housing? Well, social housing very often has to be developed, and maybe if there's not a public-private partnership in place, then you have to wait for one to come along. The government as well has, I believe, changed the accès logis and put the responsibility now on the city of Montreal and cities. That is difficult. I know that the government is the largest landowner in all Canada, so the city has access to all of the vacant lands in their jurisdiction. Now, whether they develop that for social housing is a different story.
Thank you very much for answering that. So I was reading in one of your reports, and I just wanted to ask about this. How are for-profit developers now able to charge higher rents without regulation in Quebec?
Well, there is a law that was trying to be amended, but when you build a new apartment building, when you build a new rental building, you're exempt from the rental limits for about 5 years. So you might actually see a kind of a boom in rental units where it used to be the boom in condo units. There's a reason. You can rent and increase your rent somewhat dramatically for the first 5 years.
And I know you answered this a little bit, but I just wanted to go into this a little bit more. How are housing shortages and high interest rates contributing to a housing crisis in Montreal?
It's a good question. Now, so let's look at it this way. If I have the choice of buying a house for $1 million, that has with it the land transfer tax, like the welcome taxes, as well as now it's heat, everything else you have to deal with. And my interest rate is 5.5, maybe 6%. And that's if I have good credit rating. If I have a poor credit rating, it'd be higher. That is thousands of dollars each month in a debt that could be anywhere from, let's say, 20 to 25 years. That puts a lot of people off. And some people just simply cannot afford it, so they stay in the rental market. Plus, with the new foreign housing ban, you have to have paid taxes here for 3 years before you can be exempt from this 2-year ban, which means that people who are just coming here, immigrants who are not refugees or who do not qualify under some other way to be excluded, have no choice.
I think I lost you.
I think you're back.
Hi, sorry about that. I think I lost you around the time. What was it? You mentioned to avoid, in order for, so you were talking about the foreign investment, and then you were going to immigrants and refugees, and I think that's where it cut off.
Right. So if you are coming here and you're not a refugee, okay, you're not a foreign diplomat, you are possibly shut out of buying a property in Canada for 2 years. You have no choice. You're not, either you find someone to move into, like to rent a house with, or you find, roommates for an apartment or your own apartment. And that just adds to the housing shortage. I mean, we're welcoming a lot of immigrants. We welcomed a lot of immigrants to Quebec last year. We're going to be welcoming more. Where are they going to live?
So what is the solution then? Like more social housing? Like how do we kind of, what's the proper way to address that, I guess?
I would be an armchair expert. So, given that I'm just looking at data and we're looking at trends, um, if you want people to get into owning houses who are Quebec citizens, I mean, let's not newcomers to the country, most likely reducing the interest rates will help. Although it did cause a burst in it was a housing bubble. You could have charged $1 million for what you could have only charged, let's say, $500,000 a few years before. Maybe interest rates is not the only way to do this. If wages are strong, what we can see is perhaps a new solution. Don't forget that a lot of the construction industry and real estate and rental leasing are economic drivers in Quebec, much stronger than anybody might actually understand. So what's the economic incentive to make this more towards social housing, which perhaps does not bring in the income it does? Municipalities are now looking for a greater tax base, and they're willing to put condos on top of parking lots to bring in that new tax base. I don't hear social housing, being a great rallying cry. Accès logis has now been sloughed off to the cities. There's a fight for undeveloped land, even for just to bring warehousing and industrial sites. So there's that zoning clash. I honestly, as an armchair expert, could not tell you one thing, but it would have to be many things together.
So what exactly, like what direct action have you noticed is either being taken by the municipal, provincial, or federal government in order to address the housing crisis in Montreal and in the rest of the province?
That is a very good question. There is a lot of, we would like more social housing and we would like the public-private partnership. But again, I haven't seen anything that would say, wow, this is really going to fix it. I mean, in English, it's the first home buyers plan. That's great to get people to buy. But if the real estate market doesn't cool enough, if interest rates are too high, and now with the looming possible recession, people are going to be looking at their savings rates a lot closer, and maybe they won't dip their toe in. It's a very precarious situation right now.
Thank you. And lastly, I just want to bring up the ban on foreign home buyers again
Mhm.
and ask, is this ban creating more vacant units in Montreal? And if it is it kind of like a noticeable change?
I don't think so. And here's, again, armchair expert. The ownership by foreign entities wasn't that great to begin with. Yes, they might own apartment complexes, they might own downtown high rises, but what you're looking for is more than that. I mean, if it's a ban now for the next 2 years, why haven't we seen an increase in more? Why has the Airbnb um, situation not been called in beforehand? Again, if I was a landlord who had the choice between the rental regulations of the Régie du Logement, if I had to choose between an easier, less demanding tenant than everything that might have to happen if I rented for a full year, uh, I would probably go with the more profitable, less demanding.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
Okay, I heard you just then. Uh, no
Okay.
hatchet jobs. I don't want anybody after me. It's just that's the way it is
Mhm.
on the rental field now. It's a very challenging game, even just to buy parcels of land. And if you could build a warehouse and make more money, why not?
Thank you so much for your time. Is there anything that I didn't ask that you want to bring up or is important to keep in mind?
One, the links to our articles because that's what we do. To always take care. It's low income housing, and I'm sorry we even need this, but sometimes taking care of your financial literacy, taking care of your credit score. I mean, it's very easy to check your credit score for free, and the cost of living I know has gone up, but you have to. You can't just blame uh, the lack of affordability on landlords and interest rates. If you don't take care of your credit score, if you don't take care of your own financial health, you will not qualify necessarily for an apartment. And that has nothing to do with the interest rates, you're the landlord or anything. It's your financial profile because you have not taken care of it. That's something people don't often realize.